Imagine waking up to a massive illegal fine from your arrogant HOA for a fence that you literally never built. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, that's exactly what this power-tripping HOA board tried to pull. They thought they could bully a homeowner into paying thousands of dollars for their own mistake. But instead of paying up, he took them straight to court. And by the time the judge was done with them, the HOA had to wipe out every single fine and pay for every single cent of his lawyer fees. Here is exactly how it went down. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday, thick and official looking, the kind of envelope that tells you someone spent money trying to make you nervous. Inside was a notice of violation, a compliance demand, and a fine schedule that started at $500 and climbed fast. The HOA claimed I had erected an unauthorized fence along my rear property line in direct violation of architectural guidelines, covenant restrictions, and community standards. They gave me 10 days to remove it or face escalating penalties, a lien on my property, and potential legal action. The fence they were talking about wasn't mine. I hadn't built a fence. I hadn't planned a fence. But according to Patricia Brennan, the HOA president and her enforcement committee, I was now a rogue property owner who had deliberately flouted the rules and damaged the aesthetic harmony of Meadowbrook Commons. The letter included 3 photos. Chain link 6 feet high running along what they claimed was my back boundary. Except the boundary was wrong, the fence was on the neighbor's side and I'd never touched it. That should have been easy to clear up with a phone call and maybe a property survey printout. But this wasn't about facts. This was about Patricia, and Patricia didn't do corrections. She did compliance, so I didn't panic. I got organized. I pulled my closing documents, my plat map, my survey certificate, and my title policy. Then I walked my back line with a tape measure and a camera. The fence they were citing sat 4 feet inside my neighbor's lot, built by him 6 months ago after his dog kept wandering into the greenbelt. He told me about it over the hedge one Saturday, got it permitted through the county, stayed within setback, used approved materials. It wasn't my fence, it wasn't my project, it wasn't my problem until Patricia made it one. I called the HOA office the next morning. The woman who answered sounded tired before I even spoke. I explained the situation calmly. Wrong property owner, wrong lot line, fence belongs to the neighbor at the address I provided. She said she'd pass it along to the enforcement committee and someone would follow up. No one followed up. Instead, I got a second letter. This one came 10 days later, escalating the fine to $750 and adding a separate charge for failure to respond in good faith. It also threatened to schedule a compliance hearing where the board could impose additional sanctions, including daily penalties and attorney's fees. I read it twice, not because it was complicated, but because I couldn't believe someone had doubled down this hard on being wrong. That's when I stopped calling and started documenting. I went back to my neighbor, the one who actually built the fence, and asked if he still had his permit paperwork. He did. County approved, stamped, signed, with a site map showing the fence placement entirely on his lot. I made copies. Then I requested the recorded survey from the county assessor's office showing both our parcels with legal descriptions and monumented corners. I photographed the fence again, this time with a measuring tape running from my actual property line to the fence base. 4 feet of clearance. Not even close. I also photographed the survey stakes still visible in the ground from my closing 2 years ago, the ones the title company had flagged during escrow. Then I sent a written response to the HOA with copies of everything. Survey, permit, photos, neighbor's statement. I kept the tone professional and attached a simple request. Please correct your records, withdraw the violation notice, and remove all fines from my account. I sent it certified mail, return receipt requested. I got the receipt back a week later, signed by Patricia herself. No other response came. Instead, the fines kept accruing. Third notice, $1,000. They also scheduled a hearing, mandatory appearance. Failure to attend would result in automatic judgment and immediate lien filing. I could have ignored it, but Patricia had put this on a clock now, and clocks cost money. Liens cloud titles, clouds kill refinances, so I hired an attorney. Not someone from the neighborhood, not someone who played golf with board members, someone from outside who handled HOA disputes with the kind of sharp clarity that makes bad cases go away fast. Her name was Ellen Ruiz. She read my packet in one sitting, looked up and said, "This is the dumbest thing I've seen this month, and I had a guy last week who tried to sue his HOA for emotional distress over a mailbox color." She sent a pre-hearing letter to the HOA's attorney. It was 3 pages. Page 1 laid out the facts. Wrong property, wrong owner, documented proof attached. Page 2 cited the relevant statutes on wrongful fines, improper lien threats, and bad faith enforcement under state law. Page 3 was a courtesy. Withdraw now, correct the record, and we'll consider the matter closed. Proceed to hearing and we'll file counterclaims for fees, costs, and sanctions. The HOA's lawyer never responded, but Patricia did. She sent an email directly to me, not to Ellen, bypassing the attorney she knew I'd hired. That alone told me she was either arrogant or desperate, probably both. The email was long, winding, and dressed up in the language of someone who thought sounding formal made them sound right. She said the enforcement committee had carefully reviewed my submission and remained concerned that the fence, regardless of its technical location, created a visual impact that affected community standards. She said the committee had a duty to protect property values and aesthetic cohesion. She said my lack of cooperation was noted and that the hearing would proceed as scheduled. Then she wrote the sentence that turned this into a winnable case. Boundary disputes are not an excuse to ignore HOA authority, and we expect compliance regardless of whose contractor installed the structure. She had just put in writing that she knew the fence might not be mine and didn't care. That was malice or close enough. Ellen forwarded the email to the HOA's attorney with a single line. Your client just created liability. Advise accordingly. Still no response. The hearing was set for a Thursday evening in the clubhouse community room. I arrived with Ellen, a folder of documents, and a video recording device sitting openly on the table in front of me. Patricia sat at the head table with 4 other board members, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. One of them, a man in his 60s with reading glasses on a chain, kept glancing at Patricia like he was trying to figure out how they'd ended up here. The HOA's attorney, a younger guy in a sport coat that didn't quite fit, sat off to the side with a laptop and a legal pad. He looked uncomfortable. Patricia opened the meeting by reading the violation notice aloud slowly, like she was narrating a nature documentary about rule breakers. She showed the photos on a projector screen. She referenced the architectural guidelines. She used the phrase flagrant disregard 3 times. Then she looked at me and said, "Do you have anything to say before we proceed with enforcement?" Ellen stood. "Yes, several things." She placed the survey on the table in front of Patricia. "This is the recorded boundary between my client's lot and the neighboring parcel. The fence in your photos is located entirely on the neighbor's property, not my client's." Patricia didn't look at it. "The fence impacts the sightline from multiple properties and falls within the scope of community oversight." Ellen placed the county permit on the table. "The fence was legally permitted by the property owner who built it. That owner is not my client." Patricia's jaw tightened. "We are not concerned with whose contractor performed the work. The violation exists and the responsible party must remediate." Ellen smiled, not warmly. "The responsible party is your neighbor, Mr. Callahan, who is not subject to this hearing and who built the fence lawfully on his own land. You are attempting to fine the wrong person for something they didn't do, didn't authorize, and have no legal ability to remove." One of the other board members, a woman with short gray hair, leaned forward. "Wait, are we saying the fence isn't on his property?" Ellen turned to her. "That's exactly what I'm saying. That's what the survey says. That's what the county permit says. That's what the photographs with measurements show." The woman looked at Patricia. "Did we verify the property line before we sent the notices?" Patricia's face went stiff. "The enforcement committee conducted a thorough review." "Of what?" the woman pressed. "Did anyone check the survey?" Silence. "The man with the reading glasses took them off." "Patricia, if the fence isn't on his lot, we can't fine him for it." Patricia's voice got colder. "The guidelines allow us to enforce community standards across visual impact zones, not just individual parcels." Ellen's tone didn't change, but it got quieter, which made it worse. "No, they don't. Your CC and RS grant you authority over structures on property within the HOA boundaries. You don't have authority over what owners see. You don't have authority over adjacent parcels. And you certainly don't have authority to fine someone for a fence they didn't build." She placed the email on the table. "And your president has already acknowledged in writing that she knows this might not be his fence and intends to proceed anyway." The room got very still. The HOA's attorney looked at the email, then looked at Patricia like she just set his briefcase on fire. He leaned over and whispered something. Patricia ignored him. "This hearing is about compliance, not legal technicalities." Ellen's smile was gone now. "Compliance with what? A rule you're inventing, a boundary you're imagining." She stacked the documents neatly. "You fined my client over $1,000 for something he didn't do, threatened a lien on his property, and refused to correct the record even after being provided proof. That's not enforcement, that's harassment." The man with the glasses cleared his throat. "I move we table this matter pending independent verification of the property line." Patricia shot him a look. "We don't need verification. The committee has already—" "I second the motion," the gray-haired woman said. 3 other hands went up. Patricia sat back face tight, but she didn't call the vote. She didn't have to. It was already over. Ellen wasn't finished. "Before you adjourn, I'm formally notifying this board that if the fines are not withdrawn, the violation notice is rescinded, and a written correction issued within 10 business days, we will file suit for wrongful enforcement, abuse of process, and recovery of all attorneys' fees and costs under state law. You've been provided the facts. You've been given the opportunity to fix this. What happens next is your choice." We left. Patricia stayed seated at the head table, staring at the documents Ellen had left behind like they were written in a language she refused to learn. 10 days passed. No correction, no withdrawal, no apology, so Ellen filed. The complaint was clean and brutal. Wrongful assessment of fines, violation of governing documents, bad faith enforcement, abuse of process, and a request for full fee shifting under the state statute that penalizes HOAs for pursuing baseless actions. We attached everything. The survey, the permit, the photos, the email, the hearing recording. We also subpoenaed the enforcement committee's records, meeting minutes, and any communications related to my property. Discovery was where it fell apart for them. The committee had never verified the property line. Patricia had assigned the violation based on a photo taken from the street and a guess about whose yard the fence was in. No survey check, no plat review, no contact with the county. One email thread showed a committee member asking, "Do we know for sure it's his fence?" Patricia replied, "It's close enough, he'll fix it or pay." Close enough. That phrase became the center of Ellen's argument. The HOA didn't care about facts, they cared about control, and when control didn't match reality, they tried to find reality into submission. The HOA's attorney tried to settle twice. First offer was to withdraw the fines and close the matter. Ellen countered with fees and costs. They refused. Second offer came a month later. Withdraw the fines, issue a written correction, pay half the fees. Ellen took it to me. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. No, they tried to put a lien on my house over a fence I didn't build. They knew they were wrong and kept going. I want full fees and I want it on record. Ellen nodded. Good, so do I. We went to court. Not a trial, just a motion hearing on fee shifting and sanctions. The judge was a woman in her 50s who'd clearly seen a lot of HOA cases and had no patience for the dumb ones. She read the complaint, read the response, read the email where Patricia said close enough. Then she looked at the HOA's attorney. Counsel, help me understand. Your client fined a homeowner $1,000 for a fence that wasn't on his property, refused to correct the error after being shown a survey, and escalated to a lien threat. What am I missing? He tried. Your Honor, the enforcement process relies on visual assessments and visual assessments of property you don't own. He hesitated. The committee believed, the committee didn't verify. That's the problem. You don't find someone based on belief, you find them based on fact. She flipped a page. And this email, close enough, he'll fix it or pay, that's not enforcement, that's extortion with a gavel. She granted the motion, full fee shifting. The HOA was ordered to pay my attorney's fees, court costs, and issue a formal written retraction to be recorded with the county and sent to every homeowner in the community. She also imposed a sanction directly against Patricia for bad faith conduct, a separate fine payable to the court. Then she added something I didn't expect. The board is ordered to adopt revised enforcement procedures requiring verification of property boundaries and owner responsibility before any fine is issued. You will submit those procedures to this court within 60 days. The HOA's attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Patricia wasn't in the courtroom. She'd stopped coming after the second hearing. Ellen walked out with me into the courthouse hallway, and for the first time since this started, she looked genuinely pleased. That, she said, is what happens when someone decides the rules don't apply to them. The fees came to just under $9,000. The HOA paid in full within 30 days. The retraction letter went out on HOA letterhead signed by the board treasurer, not Patricia. It was short, factual, and humiliating. The association incorrectly assessed fines against the wrong property owner for a structure not located on his parcel. The fines have been withdrawn and the association has revised its enforcement protocols. Patricia resigned from the board 3 weeks later. Quietly, no announcement, just gone from the roster. I heard from another neighbor she'd moved to a different community across town. Someplace with fewer rules or maybe just fewer people willing to fight back. I never changed anything about my property. Didn't need to. The fence that started all this is still there, still on my neighbor's lot, still legal, still none of my business. But I did make one addition. I had a survey monument placed at my rear property corner, the kind with a brass cap and an engraved legal description. It sits right where my line ends and my neighbor's begins, a small metal reminder that boundaries are real, not negotiable. I had a few people over the weekend after the case closed. Nothing fancy, just a backyard cookout with neighbors who'd watched the whole thing unfold and couldn't believe how far Patricia had taken it. One of them, a retired engineer who lived 2 doors down, raised his beer and said, "To property lines and expensive lessons." We drank to that. Ellen stopped by for half an hour on her way home from another case. She stood near the grill, looked at the fence in the distance and shook her head. You know what the crazy part is? If she just checked the survey, none of this happens. One phone call to the county, 5 minutes, I nodded, but that would have required admitting she didn't know. Exactly, Ellen said, and people like Patricia don't admit, they double down. That's the lesson. The HOA isn't the law, the guidelines aren't scripture. And when someone tries to fine you for something you didn't do, the answer isn't compliance. It's proof. I didn't tear down a fence. I built a record. And when the record was strong enough, the rest took care of itself.